Chapter 10. Malik's face was showered with his partner's blood. He wiped his eyes clean in time to see Siegfried's body topple over, head bouncing off the pavement with a dull thud. Finn was still glistening, golden and enormous, bladed hands soaked in crimson.
Cute trick with the bullet.
His blades shrank, liquefying back into 5 ordinary digits on each hand.
I didn't want to kill you or your partner.
Oddly enough, he sounded like he meant it. Malik pulled back his sleeve to reveal his recently upgraded gold watch. He adjusted the dial, twisting it as fast as he could manage.
Are you still trying to kill me?
Finn cocked his head, equal parts amused and annoyed.
With what? Your watch?
He reached down and stripped it from the agent he'd nearly halved just moments ago. I wouldn't take that if I were you, Malik said, sputtering out a mouthful of blood. Finn took a moment to savor the gold timepiece, or maybe admire the craftsmanship. And then he swallowed it whole. The effect was instantaneous. He looked more alert, eyes clear, posture straight.
That should do the trick until I get a hold of...
Finn clutched his stomach with both hands. Some indigestion, perhaps? He took a backward step and stumbled.
What's happening to me?
His molten gold eyes reflected a deep concern. Malik coughed out a few Arabic words. Al-Fraj inhum. Another drop of blood trickled from his lips. Sorry about that, mate. I warned you. The gunshots were all part of the performance, an opening act, so to speak. Malik had to sell Finn on the fact that he and Siegfried thought they could pierce his skin with traditional bullets, which of course they couldn't. The compass wouldn't have been much of an artifact if it could be bested by some tiny fragments of flying lead. Part 2 was the dramatic deathbed scene. Malik wanted to appear wounded, which meant an injury that brought him close to the brink, though he didn't intend to get nearly chopped in half during the process. Either way, the effect was convincing. Finn couldn't have known about his healing abilities and would assume the freshly eviscerated agent was uttering his dying words. The easy part was the watch, putting the shiny gold lure in plain view and waiting for Finn to gobble it up. If someone had fastened the watch to their wrist, it would have subdued them with an Egyptian curse, but ingesting it was about to have an unexpected side effect. Finn gagged and hacked, his skin now flickering wildly between his pale epidermis and the gilded sheen. A black scarab beetle crawled from his lips. He swatted it away in disgust. Another followed. And then there was a stampede. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. The insects crawled from his mouth and back into his nostrils, burrowed into his ears, clung to his clothing, scraped their way under his skin. He'd have screamed if he could just stop coughing them up, but there was no room for a sound to escape. Colby fell to his knees, tearing the inky black insects off by the handful, crushing them into gobs of tar. There were too many to contend with. They ate him from the inside out and the outside in, consuming him with a disturbing clack, 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 like an orchestra of teeth chattering in unison. When their feeding frenzy was complete, the beetles melted away, black liquid vanishing into the rainwater. Any trace that Finn had ever existed was washed away with them, and all that remained was the golden compass that had been inside of him the entire time. Rain pelted the tiny gold artifact. Before long, it looked freshly polished. Siegfried stumbled over to Malik, who was still in the process of becoming whole. He was laying paralyzed and couldn't feel his lower half yet. He surmised that his spinal column had not yet reattached. "You're alive," Malik said, still tasting the coppery tang of his own blood. "How did you manage that?" Siegfried poked at the ragged hole in his suit. The blade missed every major vein and artery. Guess I'm just lucky. As you can see, I wasn't quite so fortunate. Siegfried knelt by his side. I need to know something. Malik choked out a weak laugh. Now? His partner wiped aside a mop of soaking blonde bangs, and his eyes grew dark and intense. I need your Invictum amulet. Everything Seifert had said, everything he'd done, all of his probing questions and accusing glares had coalesced into a single, indelible truth. He couldn't have been clearer if he'd come out and said it. Caroline wasn't in remission. She never was. She doesn't want this, Malik said. She'll live long enough to watch you die, to watch everyone die. It's better than having to watch her die in 3 months. Or maybe 6 if the next round of chemo works out. Seifert's voice was suddenly thick with emotion. If it weren't raining, his face would have been stained with tears. It's funny, you know? I can affect everything around me, always tilting the odds in my favor. I just can't affect her. How's that for karma? Magic is a lot of things, John. It's rarely fair. Fuck that, Seifert said, indignant. I'm making things fair. I'm giving Caroline her life back. I smashed the amulet. It's long gone. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I know you and that girl from North Valley found a grimoire and lied about it to the agency. You're hiding secrets, Malik. Powerful healing charms, binding spells. I know you healed her uncle, too. I saw the security footage. You must know something. That was different, Malik explained. We warded off a hex. It was mystical in nature. Caroline is dying a natural death. If I could help her, I would, but I'd... Stop lying! Seifert reached down and snatched his partner's lapel, shaking him violently. What would you do to save someone you love, Malik? Tell me you wouldn't turn the world upside down and tear it inside out if it meant sparing that one special person. Or maybe you're just that cool, right? You're the only guy who doesn't need anyone. Malik had limited use of his arms, but in his weakened state, he couldn't have pushed Seifert away if he tried. And the shaking wasn't doing his spine any favors. You don't know the first thing about me, Malik said. Then hand it over. If the amulet is gone, give me the grimoire that you and that little blonde bitch found in North Valley. Of course, Malik and Callista Scott had found a powerful grimoire, but he wasn't about to hand it over to this lunatic. Look, John, even if I had something, which I don't, it wouldn't do anything to cure Caroline's cancer. And before he could finish his sentence, Seifert reached behind his back, pulled out a knife, and buried it deep into Malik's eye. Holy shit. You killed the last 2 directors, you crazy bastard. At first I didn't know what to believe, but Cho was right about you all along. Seifert's oversized VR goggles were in place, electrical nodes fixed to his temples. He was jacked into Malik's memories, reliving a highlight reel of his past experiences. There was no audio, but he was more than happy to narrate. After cutting Malik's left eye from its socket and inserting it into the temporal imaging unit, Seifert was not only taking the techno-alchemy device on its first test drive, but he was doing something it had never been intended for. He was using it on someone who was still alive. After his hasty ocular extraction, Seifert reloaded his gun and fired 10 more rounds into his partner's prone body, ensuring his spine would mend, at least for a while. He wasn't sure if Malik could be killed, but he could damn sure slow the healing process. It gave him enough time to drag Malik into a narrow alley. The rain was letting up, and the locals would be ambling by at some point. The rented van blocked the view from the street, giving Seifert a dry space to use his equipment. The technology worked in reverse chronological order, starting with the moment of death, or when the proprietor of the eyeball would normally have died, but in this case the owner had been butchered alive during a rainstorm in a dreary French town. Seifert had no doubt seen himself plunging a blade into his partner's eye socket. Last year when Malik shot Director King, and then before that The Journey. His treks through different parts of the world in search of artifacts, from the glacier caves of Iceland to the wind-blasted shores of Easter Island. and every mystical location in between. He'd circled the globe countless times in search of the arcane. Malik's curiosity had grown into an obsession, and his obsession had bubbled into a sickness. And like any untreated illness, it festered. Malik had, on a dig in a remote forest region of Germany, recovered the Invictum Amulet, the legendary artifact that granted eternal life. Of course, he didn't know that at the time. What he had learned about the amulet had been translated from Sumerian to Mycenaean Greek and hundreds of years later into Aramaic. By the time the information had been transcribed into a Latin codex around the 3rd century, many of the finer details had been shorn away. He was expecting to become stronger, faster, more durable, not to ensure he outlived everyone around him. Without thinking, Malik looped the chain around his neck, and the amber stone lit the dark forest like a blast of midday sunshine. He felt instantly powerful. He felt invincible. At the time, he didn't realize that he actually was. He later destroyed the artifact, but by then it was too late. The hex had tethered to him like a parasite. Malik's story got even more interesting. Before the CIA had tracked him down and conscripted him into Father, he'd resumed his globe-trotting ways in the hopes of finding another artifact, or a spell, or anything that could lift the curse he'd been afflicted with. If there was an anti-Invictum out there, he was going to locate it, or spend the rest of his life trying. He was on a dive off the coast of Greece when he located a second magical item, a stone tablet. "It looks like you've been hiding more than one artifact," Seifert said. He let out a low whistle as he adjusted his goggles. Whew, stunning. It was a beautiful woman's face etched into a sandstone relic the size of a dinner plate. Her hair was alive with a nest of hissing vipers. Malik's lungs had grown back, and he managed a few shaky words. "I've been thinking of that artifact a lot lately, ever since I saw what you'd packed for this assignment." Seifert removed the goggles and placed them back in the crate. "You tricked Finn into taking your watch. Clever, I have to admit. You knew he was obsessed with gold and would grab it as soon as you pulled back your sleeve. But he was a jackass who fell for a gag out of an old spy film. Now you're dealing with a pro." Malik lifted his head off the ground. It was all he could do at the moment. His extremities were lifeless, awaiting instructions from his cerebral cortex. Until his spine mended, he lacked the hard wiring to deliver any commands. Looking for this? Seifert reached behind his back and pulled a Desert Eagle from his belt. He tossed it on the pavement, less than a foot from Malik's head. "Take your best shot, smart guy." "I'd love to hear your scenario. How are you planning to kill me?" "Because you're like everyone else." Malik chuckled and instantly regretted it, wincing in pain. "You're predictable. You're pathetic. You know that? All your bravado, all your witty remarks. And this is where it lands you, in a pile of your own organs, with one eye, trying to sound like a badass. I'll tell you how this story ends. You're going to point me towards your collection of artifacts and grimoires, and then you're going to help me cure Caroline. If you play ball, I might not turn you in." Seifert blinked hard. He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "Oh, what's wrong?" Malik flashed a hint of a smile. "Some dust in the air?" "My vision." Seifert rubbed his eyes furiously, digging in with the heels of his palms. What the hell is going on?" "I told you more than once, John. You'll never survive what I've seen. You should have listened." Seifert blinked again. His eyelids flew open, revealing a pair of polished stones set into his eye sockets. "What have you done?" The agent fell to his knees and crawled through puddles, clawing his way over to Malik. He grabbed his partner's tie and pulled him upright until they were face to face. "Reverse the spell, you son of a bitch!" He watched as Seifert turned, slowly and painfully, into a remarkably lifelike statue made of sandstone. The agent begged for forgiveness as he solidified. He screamed. He bargained. It was too late for negotiation. Malik couldn't have stopped the transformation if he wanted to. A few minutes later, Malik's eye had regrown. and his spine had reattached. His insides were back where they belonged. He stood, lugged the Seaford-shaped statue into a rented van, and slammed the door shut. He drove back to the airship. He loaded everything, including the statue, into the company jet. Then he flew back to Virginia.